USCHO.com.
Welcome to USCHO Weekend Review for Monday, December 4th, 2023. I'm Ed Trefzger along with Derek Schooley and sitting in for Jim Connolly, USCHO ECAC correspondent Dan Rubin. So welcome aboard, Dan. Thanks for joining us.
But I'd like to point out that there are 3 Atlantic hockey guys on this call. So if we don't have a plethora of Atlantic hockey talk at some point here, then I'm just going to be straight disappointed. I know I cover ECAC. We all know where my heart sits.
The problem that we have is, first of all, I got to hang out with Ed this weekend. I was up I almost jumped in on their post-game show. That's they want to interview me. I was going to take questions from the RIT fans about the future of RIT hockey and how good they look and all that kind of stuff. But I just sat there and listened to Ed do his work after he mocked my work the whole weekend long as well.
You know, we said an awful lot of nice things about your team. You've got the ingredients there.
Yeah, we need to find a way to score some goals.
Yep. And we also saw an outstanding goaltender performance Friday night.
Yeah, Chad was outstanding on Friday. We just didn't give him the run support that he needed. And we came back and we played really good on Saturday. And they still have players playing for RIT that were playing when we played in 2021. So it's completely unfair. And sooner or later, those guys got to graduate, don't they?
Well,
it's like you. They never leave.
They never leave. Well, you know what it is with the COVID year? Most of the guys have come back to RIT for their 5th year. They haven't transferred elsewhere. So that's why you're seeing all the same folks. There's a reason for that.
It's just something that you're putting in the water in Rochester. It's like me in Eastern Massachusetts. I'm never leaving. There's just never there's no life outside of the Pike interchange where I live.
I mean, garbage plates in Roch Vegas. I mean, what more you got?
Exactly. Well, it was good to see you. Good to see your team back on the ice. And we also had a nice opportunity to say hi to Atlantic Hockey Commissioner Michelle Morgan, who's out trying to make sure she visits every location. In fact, today had to get down to Delaware. This is going a little off script, but the University of Delaware adding women's hockey. They had the press conference today. And Derek, that means your daughter's team, Robert Morris Women, will get to take on a new competitor in a couple of seasons too.
It's always great to see expansion and new schools starting Division I hockey, and whether it's in the women's side or the men's side, it's really cool. And to see that pop up, I had heard that on the radar a while ago. I completely forgot about it, but it was a shock to most everybody in college hockey on Friday when they announced that. Welcome to college hockey, the Blue Hens.
Well, let's jump in. Jim left us a rundown for today, and he'll be awfully disappointed when he tunes in and doesn't hear us following it. So why don't we jump right in? The marquee series of the weekend, the one anticipated by everybody, had number 2 North Dakota and number 3 Denver. At Denver, it's 4-1. A 4-1 Denver lead. North Dakota rallies back, ends up winning 7-5. I guess that didn't disappoint any fans except maybe some Pioneer fans.
Oh, I thought the series was, I thought that game, I thought the whole series was great. And isn't it awesome when you get like these two teams that you know can reach a level and they do it against one another. And we were talking last week about how these teams were going to be able to walk into it and score goals, but they both had decent defenses, and when Denver's up in that game 4-1, you're sitting here thinking, in the first period, you're sitting here thinking, you're like, well, there goes the neighborhood. But North Dakota just hit the gas pedal, and that was, you scored twice in the second period. You get those couple of strategically timed power plays too, which helped. They had that in the second period. They had just scored, and then Denver took a penalty, and it gave North Dakota the next goal, and it just kind of rolled from there. And to see that happen, those were the 2 best teams in the country, and they were playing. You could have taken those 2 teams, put them in an NHL arena, and it would have been that's how good the game was.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you get a 4-1 lead, you don't expect the team to come storming back, and obviously that's what happened. But kudos to that. Could have went a complete weekend sideways. But they found a way to get points on Saturday and didn't walk out of there empty-handed. And that's the biggest thing is you can't get swept, especially when it's the perceived top two teams in the league, and to be able to rally after, because you got to live with that all day. And you got to live with the regret of having a 4-1 lead and losing it. And it stings. It makes the day longer. It makes the day more miserable. And they came out firing, and then to be able to get the overtime win next night is a big deal for them.
Derek, I remember you having a team that was down 5-1 and coming back to win 6-5.
Yeah, we did. It was 5-1. You called that game, I think, and those are the things that you can't write a script for that. A lot of good things have to happen. And we got a 5-on-3. You score on the back end. You score a goal on a delayed penalty, and you score on the back end. I mean, things just have to happen, and all the stars have to align, because that doesn't happen very often. It helped for us to have Brady Ferguson back then, who had 58 points in the league that year. But those things don't align, and be able to rally from 4-1 down, like we talked about, is the stars have to align, and good things got to happen. And putting up 7's a big deal as well.
North Dakota walks away with 4 out of 6 points in the NCHC, a little bit of juice in the PairWise out of this too, but those league points are huge, especially on the road. Well, another great weekend was had by Boston University. They move way up in the PairWise. They swept Merrimack in what was a rematch of last year's Hockey East championship game. Meanwhile, BC slipped up a bit on Friday. They had to settle with a split for Northeastern, but you live out in Hockey East country, Dan. How about those two matchups?
Friday night was weird. Friday night was a weird night up at Lawler for Merrimack and BU. BU wins that one 4-1, but the game was a strange night. There were, I think, 100-something penalty minutes that happened in one of those. There were 3 5-minute majors, 2 game misconducts just against Merrimack, and I think a fire alarm went off at one point. Was what as I was following some of it on Twitter. There was I don't know if it was pulled, I don't know if it just went off, but the end of the second period with a minute and a half to go, you get a fire alarm go off. They have to evacuate the building. They come back in, they resurface the ice. You play 90 seconds, you take a 2-minute break, and then you play third period. So that's not something I think that's in the game plan for anybody, but BU did a nice job in the comeback in that third period of just holding on, getting out of the building, and then turning around the next night with a 5-2 win. Look, those are 2 huge wins for BU. I like Merrimack a lot as a team. I always have this year. I think that it puts them in a position to overcome the struggles at the start of the year that we'd been talking about in terms of what BU couldn't do, where they had to get better. They, watch BC go to Northeastern and eat a split in a home and home, and Northeastern was sitting down there and last with no league wins. So this is a big weekend. This is a big weekend for the power structure in Hockey East, shifting down a couple of green line stops back to BU Central.
Well, I mean, I'm sure Steve's going to love the fact that Dan comes on the first show that he's been, and then he throws out that North Dakota and Denver are the 2 best teams in the country. You're going to get a tongue lashing from Steve Metcalf on that one for sure.
Oh, without question.
Yeah, I mean, he'll give you the runaround there for sure. But I followed it like you, Dan. We were obviously playing at the same time, and you go on Twitter, and next thing you know, where Mike McMahon's tweeting that he's being evacuated from the building, and you got to fall back and see, and what a weird hockey game, and to have that happen. And I would always think that wouldn't ice be a safe place if there's a fire to be on the ice? That's the question. Yeah.
I've been at the jar. I've been at the jar when a fire alarm went off. There's no such thing as a safe place on the ice.
Yeah, but good weekend for them. And I know Scott Borick was not very happy with some of the comments that he made post game, and trying to get his team rallied moving forward.
As we talk about Quinnipiac now, this is really, Dan, can I say it's a down year, or should I say it's an awful year for ECAC this year? But Quinnipiac is the one shining light in that whole conference right now.
Yeah, it's been a tough go. I don't know. This has been. I thought there'd be. I didn't think there'd be a regression to the mean. I thought there'd be. I knew that the standings would kind of play out differently from last year. I think I'd said that even going into the season, that I didn't see Clarkson hanging down too long, and I thought Princeton was going to be improved. And I thought Dartmouth was going to be improved, and Harvard takes a step back, so you wind up with a league that's now got a lot more parity. But the problem is that didn't translate into wins in the non-conference schedule all that well, and this is a conference that is running about one or two teams deep right now. So the one team being Quinnipiac, which is not, I think, and when I talked to Rand Pecknold actually last week, he said this has been a work in progress. They had lost so many guys that they needed to put the team back together, and you had new guys coming in, freshmen. They liked what they had. They just had to learn how to play together, and they weren't playing together. Now they're playing together, and they're playing really well. And I think when you couple the fact that the team is already miles ahead of where the rest of the league is, stepping into league play, figuring out some of those problems, they just steamrolled through another 2 wins, and it's already. I mean, I know Clarkson's got a couple games that they can make, that they're going to make up along the way, and 8 games, 6 games, 2 games in hand, but we're hitting Christmas, and it already kind of feels like it's Quinnipiac's Cleary Cup to lose.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel bad for Quinnipiac saying they've got to reload. They've got the ability after you win a national championship to get all the best players, be out in all the best recruiting conversations for portal guys, for recruits. So they're not going to stay down for very long in the season. We questioned that at the start of the year because they were struggling a little bit. They were trying to figure out. But to go into to get those points over RPI and Union, it would have been a bigger surprise if they wouldn't have got those points. RPI is really taking a struggle right now. If you look at their scores, 9-1 to Northeastern, or 9-2, followed by a 5-1, and now 6-4 to Princeton. I would have been more surprised if Quinnipiac wouldn't have got all 6 points. I mean, that's what it comes down to. They've got to get those points, just like RIT. They're the leaders in Atlantic hockey. They've got to get all the points against the perceived bottom teams right now. And we could be better at Robert Morris in the second half of the year, but right now we're in last place, and you've got to take, if you want to be the champion, you've got to take the points from the bottom teams, and that's what Quinnipiac did.
I think and kind of alongside that too is that Quinnipiac having RPI first actually wound up helping them out in terms of the weekend, because Union, or actually made the weekend tougher, I should say, because Union had already beaten Princeton and had beaten them well and had been playing pretty well since the beginning of November. But then Quinnipiac comes in and still gets a 5-0 win. So that shows you kind of where Quinnipiac is in relation to the rest of the league, because Union had been playing well and then came in and still took a 5-0 loss to Quinnipiac.
Dan, you mentioned Clarkson. They've got 2 games in hand, 9 points back. A weekend sweep gets them within 3 mathematically. What about the Golden Knights?
I like kind of what is happening up there. I wouldn't say that this is, like you said, when it comes to ECAC teams, there's going to be a lot of problems come the end of the year in terms of the PairWise, and there's going to be who gets in, who doesn't get in. I like what I'm seeing, at least from Quinnipiac. Last month, I think the first month of the season, they took a couple of tough losses. They lost that 4-1 game to Merrimack. They lost to RPI back on Veterans Day weekend, but seem to have started to hit some stride. The road trip to Brown and Yale helped. I think this past weekend, coming out and at least getting 5 of the 6 points, Dartmouth has been really good at not losing games outright this year. Like they've just been really good at least pushing games into overtime and pushing games into shootouts. But it has been more of a grind, I think, than usual for every ECAC team. So to be able to go on a run gets you at least towards the top of the league heading into the holidays, which is where you really want to be. You don't want to have to make up that ground in ECAC. You want to be able to have that that in hand with the 1-game series in the first round of the playoff.
We talked last week about the problems that the CCHA is having with the PairWise. They're after Quinnipiac, you can talk about the same thing that the ECAC is having, because you got Cornell at 23. Then you got to fall all the way down to Clarkson at 33. And then after that, I mean, you're into the 40s before Dartmouth and Union pop up at 42. So they're going to need, for them, really, they're going to have a team that really takes a good second half to make a run like a Cornell. And then they're going to have to win whatever non-conference games they have left. Or you could be talking about a one bid league there in the ECAC, unless somebody would beat Quinnipiac in the ECAC tournament.
Strangely enough, Atlantic Hockey is sitting better than CCHA and ECAC in the PairWise right now.
Yeah, 19 and 20 AIC. Yeah, AIC's got at 19 and 20 with RIT. Then you've got another couple teams that are right on the cusp at Sacred Heart at 30. So those are three pretty good teams, and there's no. I guess you see why they're at the top three in Atlantic Hockey right now.
Looking at the Big Ten, Wisconsin, they had made it to number one and then got swept at Michigan State and then lost the first half of a pair with Alaska Anchorage. They won that second game with Alaska Anchorage and then came back in league play this weekend, 3-0 and 6-1 against Ohio State. 3 in a row for the Badgers, and it looks like they've got things back together, although Ohio State may be a little bit more down this year than we were thinking.
But I also think you need some of those teams on you. You need some of those games on your schedule, the bounce back type games, when you know there's a team that's struggling a bit to be able to go out and win those games. And Wisconsin, every team's going to face its down period at some point. We knew that the pace that they were on at the start of the season was not something that was sustainable for a whole year. Otherwise, you're on a pace to be one of the greatest turnaround. I mean, still on pace to be one of the greatest turnarounds in one season that I think any team would have had. But I just don't think that, taking that I don't really know how to say it, but you need to be able to get those points. Ohio State's still a decent team. And it's still, even if they're down, you still got to take those, and you still got to get some wins going. And once you do, you hit some momentum.
Ohio State, you're right, Ed. And Dan, those are shocking to see where they're at in last place in the Big Ten without a win. And it doesn't get any easier for them. They've got Minnesota the last two games before break. And if you would have said what's more likely, Wisconsin being in the upper echelon or Ohio State not having a win, I mean, you wouldn't have thought either of that going in. You got Wisconsin in the top, and we're talking about them bouncing back to win. And you're talking about Ohio State team that was picked to be I believe they were in the top 15 to start the year. That started off 3-0. I mean, it started off 3-0-1. They tied Lindenwood, or 2-0-1, but they haven't won a game. That's a bigger surprise than Wisconsin being up top, in my opinion.
Well, we're going to take a pause. We've got more to talk about, including some teams we haven't talked about enough, and some congratulations to dole out. And that's when USCHO Weekend Review continues. Welcome back to USCHO Weekend Review. Jim reminded us there's some teams we're probably not talking enough about. Now, we have talked a little bit about Maine, but they're now 8-3-1 after wins over New Hampshire and Connecticut. They're now up in the top 5 in the PairWise. We knew Ben Barr would turn around that program. It seems like this is the year where his efforts are paying off.
We all know that I'm a big Maine guy when it comes to Hockey East and it comes to what they're doing, and I'm borderline having them challenge North Dakota and Denver right now for the top 2 spots in the poll, in my opinion. Maine UNH that lived up to its billing before the weekend. That was a rocking atmosphere, great rivalry game, and Maine comes out, wins it, and then turns around and a couple days later beats UConn handily. And managing the strain of a 2-game weekend against 2 opponents, which is not something that happens in Hockey East play all that often, is impressive by itself. I would argue, and we joked earlier that Steve Metcalf might have a problem with me saying that the Western teams are the best teams in the country. People in Boston need to look north, because right now Maine's playing the best hockey in Hockey East. I mean, they're there, and seeing Maine there I've always said it feels right, and there's not more you can say except they're rolling right now.
Well, you're really coming in with the hot takes, aren't you? Right, taking Jimmy's spot. You want this spot on every weekend now, don't you? Because you're coming out hot. I would have a hard time. You've got a few teams, Boston University and Boston College, that would have a lot to say over if Maine's the best team in Hockey East or not. But I respect it, Tan. I respect you coming in, throwing out heat. You want the trolls that usually come after Ed to come after you on this one.
Well, the key is that I always say right now. It doesn't mean that I think they might be the best team at the end. Doesn't mean I think they're going to be the best team even in the next few weeks or in January or whatever it is. But right now. So that's always my cop out. There's always an asterisk applied there. The wording is key. I think I failed in my career choice. I should have been an attorney.
So I watched part of that game last night, and it is good to see Maine come bring the historic program back. You had the building was full. It was an afternoon game while football was going on, and then they were treated to a lot of goals in that game. I mean, that's a game that was tight all the way through, and then Maine just exploded late with 3 goals in the unanswered in the third to kind of run away. But the building was rocking, and it was a good hockey game. And to have, I just pulled it up, 46-61 on a Sunday afternoon, 5:00, when there was a lot of good football going on, is big for their program, big for their fans, and it was a neat atmosphere to watch on a Sunday afternoon.
You say good football. They're in New England. There's not good football for them to watch.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had delays. I had the Steelers weather delays here a couple of times, and that wasn't good football either. But you have to throw something out, don't you?
Let's talk a little bit about Western Michigan, Derek Schooley's alma mater, and your former teammate Pat Ferschweiler doing a nice job there. They had lost 3 in a row at the beginning of November inside the NCHC, but with sweeps over St. Lawrence and Lindenwood, teams they should sweep. They're now 10-3-1, and that has them inside the PairWise bubble at about number 12 right now. How about the Broncos?
Yeah, and they got what we talked about there a little bit about, they got what the doctor ordered when they were struggling a little bit. They got St. Lawrence that came in that's 5-10-1, and then they got Lindenwood, and Lindenwood has played some teams tough, so it wasn't going to be a complete and utter cakewalk for the Broncos. They still had to come out and play, and a 3-1 Friday, it looked like that was their Lindenwood's chance, but Western just came back, and they're deep. They're expected to be high. They've got a lot of older guys, and then they pulled in some more good grad transfers that they've been doing, the 5th-year guys, and it doesn't get easier. They needed a little bit of a good feeling, because then they've got Denver coming up, and then they go on Christmas break, and after that you're going to have the most of the NCHC play minus another weekend with Lindenwood. But it doesn't get. They wanted to go into this weekend having some good feelings, and obviously they got Denver at home coming up, which is going to be another marquee series every time you throw some of these teams together.
The only thing about Western right now is that at least scoring wise, they've been a little bit top heavy, but getting on track with these games, getting through Lindenwood, like you said, Derek, the Lindenwood team plays teams tough. They're not a bad team, and I think one of the biggest things for Western right now is the fact that they're playing exceptionally well in the back. I mean, Cameron Rowe is a very, very, very good goaltender, and he's got a good defense in front of him. And as long as that happens, as long as that kind of stays on the path that it's on, they're going to win a lot of games up there.
You know what? The one thing that I will say that we are missing a little bit is Western has done a pretty good job. They beat Colorado College leading up to that, which is a big win, especially in there. And Colorado College is actually kind of on a little bit of a downward cycle right now. They lost 3 in a row. They came back and swept Miami, and now they've lost. They haven't won in their last 4. So there is some little separation going on in the NCHC from top to bottom as well. And Colorado College is going to have to turn it around pretty quick with a series at North Dakota.
Colorado College was the victim of Arizona State over the weekend. We've talked a lot about the Sun Devils on this program, but Alaska, with a weekend sweep of Alaska Anchorage, is at number 21 in the PairWise as we record. They're in reach, but boy, it's tough for an independent. Everything has to fall in place, and it was just by a whisker and a game last year that they didn't make the tournament. How about Alaska? What are things looking like for them?
I'll tell you this, and I'll dive right in here. You're going to know a lot about Alaska here in the next month. I think we're going to have a really good idea where they stand. They've got Augustana right now. They play the tournament, the Great Lakes tournament with Michigan Tech and Ferris and Michigan State. They're going to need to have positive results there. Then they go to North Dakota. After that, it's all independence from there on out. And Ed, we've talked about it. There's not a lot of ground to be made up there except the Arizona State games. So you're going to know a lot by January 6th when they come in after playing Augustana, Michigan Tech, either Ferris, Michigan State, and then 2 in North Dakota. If they're within the PairWise bubble, I think you're going to be able to see them maybe hold on if they can have positive results against Arizona State.
The one thing that goes along with that is don't lose some of those games to that are involved to Long Island. Don't lose to Stonehill. Don't lose to Anchorage. That's those games. LIU, you can't lose those games. They're going to have to stay up and be able to know that every game is a playoff game, because even one slip after that is a problem. It's going to be a big time problem when you're facing teams down in 50 and 64 in the PairWise and how that works out. The good news for Alaska is that the travel aspect kind of breaks nicely for them in the second half of the year. I know that they play Arizona State on back to 2 out of 3 series in the second half, but they don't have to travel east to play LIU. They're going to have LIU at home in between. So they are going to play at home against Anchorage, then go to LIU, then come back to Alaska to play in Anchorage again, and then go back to Arizona State, which sounds like a lot, but it would be a lot harder if they didn't have a time period in between where they would come home and have that game. I know it's the weekend in between that one game against Anchorage down in Anchorage. I know they still got, I think, fly there, but that's sometimes the bus legs can get caught up when you have to come down from the north and play some of these tough series.
You made a good point there, and there's almost 2 different things you got to look at in the Fairbanks schedule. You got to do well against the perceived big time teams, and then, like you said, you can't lose to any of their independents. And if you do, it can only be Arizona State. You can't lose to anybody else other than teams that are above you, because then they'll just there's no way to make those up.
Well, finally, it was a big win for Notre Dame on Friday night, 6-1 over Michigan. But even more of a milestone was head coach Jeff Jackson getting his 400th victory as a head coach at Notre Dame. He's closing in on 600 wins for the career. Derek, you've known Jeff Jackson for a number of years. Really one of the great coaches, and this is a nice milestone for him.
Yeah, Jeff's a good person. He's a great coach. He recruited me to go to Lake State. He was an assistant coach. Ended up, as you said earlier, going to Western. But he got the head coaching job right then, and you played against Lake State all the time when they were in their heyday. I think during my 4 years of college, they went to 3 straight national championship games and won 2 of them. And their best team was my freshman year that got upset by Clarkson in an old 2-game total goal series up in the Sioux. So that was probably his best team, and been fortunate enough to coach against him. And you just watch in awe of what he does. He just continually finds ways to reinvent his team, whether they're playing a 1-3-1, whether they're playing a trap, or whether then they're opening it up. Because for a while, that was the big knock on Jeff at Notre Dame. And it was so defensive that none of the top recruits would go there. And then he changed. He changed and he started becoming more offensive and started getting the better players and Final Fours and really good things. And Jeff's a great coach, and it was really neat to see that 400 and what are we, almost at 600 wins total? Ed, what were we?
Yep. Oh, something like 582, 585, somewhere in there. Different sources have slightly different numbers, but very close to 600.
Yeah. So you're going to see another one pop up here, another milestone. And that's just a testament to his career. And he was gone for a while too. So just think, if he wouldn't have went to the OHL, or he wouldn't have went to the NHL, or he wouldn't have went to the development program, how many wins he really would have. Pretty impressive.
Yeah. Derek, you mentioned the development program. I if memory serves right, he was one of the first directors.
He started it
at a time when he started it. He started the whole thing. And I mean, I know World Juniors are coming up, and it's an annual thing, and USA, the national development team, we see the national development team pop up all the time. And it's impressive to me to think of where the intermediate youth kind of American game is, and then look at a coach and see him. Obviously, I don't have the personal experience with him, but it's more of the, respecting the place in the game to see a guy who has that reputation. Like that to me is, I look at the way college hockey is now, and I look at the way the pipelines are, and to know he was the guy. He was the guy that did it. He was the guy that started it all. And he's still coaching and still, like you said, reinventing himself, and he's had to. I mean, Notre Dame has had to change.
When you talk about reinventing, we've had a lot of conversations with Jeff over the years. And here's a guy who goes back to the 80s as a head coach, but he's adapted to technology. He's adapted generationally with players. He's adapted. His skill levels have changed. He's moved along with it. And, he talked about how the changes have required things to adapt. And so he's managed to adapt and still hang on to some of those foundational things about hockey that go back generations.
One of the more impressive things about it is he's had the same staff. Obviously he's had a couple new guys come in, and with the third assistant, he had Jim Montgomery as a volunteer, but Andy Slaggert and Paul Pooley have been there the whole time. Andy Slaggert was there before Jeff, and Paul came there after the Providence deal, and he worked for Jeff at Lake Superior. So this is it's hard to keep your same staff and keep new ideas and not butt heads with them after, 20 plus years with these guys. And you can go on and on. We could have done a whole 15-minute segment about Jeff Jackson, and we wouldn't have been off base in any of it.
Well, we're kind of at our time limit here. I know we all have things on the schedule. Dan, thanks for sitting in for Jim. He's probably going to be a little nervous now hearing how you did and say, oh, do I still have a job next Monday? So thanks for covering for him.
The seat was cold when I sat in it. Now I don't know. It feels a little warm underneath me. I don't know if I'm leaving. If the seat got we put the seat warmers on for him.
Well, you came out firing. That's for sure. You did your opportunity. I think this is the first time in 3 years that the third year we've been together, Ed, that one of us couldn't be there. And Dan Rubin came out, and he wants to be a permanent alternate. That's for sure.
Yep. He's sitting by the phone just waiting for next week.
Staring at my Christmas tree, just waiting for Jimmy to have to be on the road again.
Well, with that, we'll wrap up. For Derek Schooley, for Dan Rubin, I'm Ed Trefzger, and we'll catch you next time on USCHO Weekend Review.